Evan's scared.
Butts.
What?
We were fandangoing.
Oh!
Contesting wrestling.
Okay, yeah. You're listening to Contesting Wrestling, the internet's #1 all Fandango the Wrestler fan cast.
It's Fandango.
Okay, well, nobody on the announced team is clear or consistent about that.
Well, that's part of the gimmick, but we'll get into
Fan Chungus.
It is. I for one love the return of the Chungus memes, and
they had to halt them. Did you see? They had to cut it off. It was too much.
Can I just say Chungus? Very fun word to say. That's why it's my favorite meme
for sure.
I want to know about this because this is slipped past me somehow.
Oh,
but
how does it feel to finally be the one who doesn't know what everybody else on the podcast is talking
Professor
about?
Ben doesn't know about something. Ooh. Let's not tell him.
I didn't know I was like that.
No, sorry.
Right.
Actually,
so
I'm not sorry.
you want to do the introductions?
Yeah, this is a main feed episode, so it could be the first episode someone is listening to of this podcast.
We really need to.
Katie Bella, professional referee.
We should record a proper intro that we just drop at the beginning.
We might have lost everybody in the fandangoing.
Yeah, it's good. You're listening to Contesting Wrestling. It's a podcast where I, Evan Burke, a writer, jack of all trades. I'm mostly just on Twitter these days.
Jack off of all trades.
He is basically professionally unemployed.
I am getting paid a very small amount of money to be unemployed from the government. I'm at Twitter. I'm on Twitter at Evan Burke, etc. So if you have issues with me, you can tweet at me, and I can tell you to suck it in real time. Speaking of suck it, as a concept, this is a podcast about wrestling in which I, somebody who traditionally am not a fan of wrestling, interrogates, 3 of my dearest and closest friends, all of whom either work within wrestling as an industry or are just walking encyclopedias of it and huge fans and getting like a doctorate basically in thinking about wrestling.
I just pretend to know anything.
And then you are every bit as much of an encyclopedia as these two. I
got my doctorate in more traditional philosophical concepts and then was like, ha, suckers, I'm going to write about wrestling.
Here's Ben and his doctorate again.
So yeah, everybody else
not in thugonomics.
And no,
thugonomics was your minor.
That's totally true.
Nobody should have gotten that. Least of all, somebody should have pulled John Cena aside and been like, "You should turn it down a little bit."
I mean, they did eventually.
I guess so. Yeah, I guess that's how he still has a career.
I thought turning it up was what made him successful.
Turn it up. No, that's what made Too Cool
Too
successful.
Cool.
The Scotty Too Hottie and Grandmaster Sexay.
There was
nothing. If we hadn't lost everyone.
There was nothing cool about Grandmaster Sexay ever.
Cool.
Rest his soul.
All right, and also on this podcast, only I introduce myself. Everyone else can deal with it.
All right, well, yeah.
I'm Big Chungus.
Big Chungus Katie Vella, independent wrestling referee.
Who formerly appeared on this podcast under a different name, but has now cast that name to the side.
I was Betsy Ross. A bunch of men in face masks with the flag on them showed up at my door with guns and threatened me. So I'm just going by my...
Threatened to make you their leader.
Yeah, I'm just going by my real name now. So
you were sued by America over.
I was sued by America. Yes.
I'm Dr. Ben Abelson, professor of philosophy at Mercy College, longtime fan of professional wrestler, and now scholar. You can hear me read a paper at the upcoming first ever WrestlePosium this WrestleMania weekend. I don't know, Google it. I'll have more info eventually.
My name is Doc Diamondfire. I've been in pro wrestling for about 11 years. I'm happy to be on this podcast, and I'd like to lend a voice of somebody on the inside.
Today, we are entering for the second time on the main feed And the third time, if you are a Patreon subscriber, you should check us out for weekly premium episodes on Patreon, $5 a month, patreon.com/.
This is a long parenthetical.
Contesting Wrestling. Made only longer by your interruption. This is our second foray into the world of Christopher Jericho. If you have not listened to our part 1 of this, you totally should go back and check it out. It's a lot of fun. And just a reminder, this was basically inspired by the fact that every time I have talked to a wrestling fan and asked them what, who their favorite wrestler is or who they think the best wrestler is, you always kind of get this answer of, well, I guess technically it's Chris Jericho. Although it is Chris Jericho is Katie's favorite wrestler of all time,
yes.
pretty much. And so today we're delving into some stuff from his more recent career.
Yeah, and I think it's in his more recent career that he has developed that reputation because he has, had so much longevity, and he's reinvented himself in really interesting ways that have allowed for that longevity. So today we're talking about really the second half of his career, which began basically in 2008 when he returned to the WWE.
Was that 2008 or 2000? Around
I think
there.
it was 07.
07 or 08 under the Save Us 222 viral marketing gimmick, which was very effective. And he was the first person in wrestling to really capitalize on the potential of that kind of viral marketing.
Yeah, let the people speculating do it. And people figured it out almost immediately, but that didn't make it any less effective because people felt smart when they figured it out.
Yeah, there would be these videos that would just say Save Us 222 with a bunch of digital nonsense.
It was 2007, I looked up.
All right, 2007. And I was actually thinking about that, Katie, because you corrected me a little while ago. I don't know, for some reason, 2007, 2008 is really freaking blurry for me.
It was a
All
really
those
hard
years.
time to be a fan.
I
It
was smoking
very
a
hard.
lot of weed during that period of my life as well.
I mean, was it 2007 or 08 that the Benoit stuff happened?
It was 07, so I was going to say
Yeah.
that you corrected me. I thought it was 08, and you corrected me that it was 07. And I'm thinking that the return of Jericho may have had a lot to do with the fact that, Eddie Guerrero had died, the Chris Benoit tragedy had happened, it would be very much in WWE's interest to say, hey, Jericho, we'll give you a lot of money and whatever push you want. If you who were of that same generation as Eddie and Benoit, who were a friend of theirs, who had a lot of the same story, could come back and make people feel a little bit better. And I think that's a lot of what happened.
Yeah, I mean, he certainly did. He certainly is of that generation. And when he came back in, he was a much bigger star than he was when he left because he needed to get away from the audience for a while. He was fresh.
He came back with a new moveset, largely. He invented he didn't invent the Codebreaker. He took it from Naomichi Marufuji. But he popularized it and made it a finishing move. He had a couple of other really cool new moves. Now, where we're picking up with the matches that we're actually talking about are several years after he came back. Closer to when he came back are going to be some of the matches we're going to talk about on the premium episode upcoming. But here we're starting actually in 2013.
Yep.
WrestleMania 29, his match with Fandango.
First, I started writing like, hey, what's this guy's deal? And then a few minutes in, I was like, all right, I get what his deal is.
He's a ballroom dancer.
Yes, and that's specifically, I would say, a salsa dancer. Or at least the stuff that's playing is sort of a faux Cuban kind of thing.
Fandango's deal is Johnny Curtis is one of the most underrated wrestlers of the last 10 years. That's his deal.
yeah.
A big part of his deal, for sure. And I think, they were trying to capitalize on the popularity of Dancing with the Stars.
Yes.
Jericho himself had been on Dancing with the Stars.
Oh,
Yeah,
how did he do?
you'll notice in this match he's very lean for him. Like he's very small. And that's because he had been doing the Dancing with the Stars stuff. This might have been when he had gotten really into DDP yoga too. He was really lean compared to any other time in his career.
This is the one time that I've seen, because I always find Jericho's slight love handles to make him a little more accessible to me, just because he's like a little bit of more of like just a guy kind of, but in
he's
this
never been a bodybuilder.
I also enjoy Jericho's love handles.
for
different reasons.
Yeah.
I think he was eliminated after the first round of Dancing with the Stars, wasn't
I
he?
don't think he was eliminated in the first round.
No, he did like
but
middling. He
Yeah,
came like right in the middle of the pack. It was the singing show he was on that he got eliminated first.
Okay.
Yeah.
The like singing show
You
that
mean the
only
thing that he does professionally?
Yeah, no,
Well,
it was hilarious.
As it turns out, he was better at moving his body, which is actually what he had been doing professionally for most of his life, as opposed to singing, which was at this point, even though he had released a couple of albums, more of a hobby.
Well, the singing thing I remember, I can't even remember the name of the show. It was like a Dancing with the Stars except with celebrity singers. And like it was a promotional disaster for the WWE at the time because they were hot off Stacy going to and doing Dancing with the Stars and never coming back, but that's another story.
Yeah.
And so they were like, "Oh, good, we got Jericho on the show now. We can catch the same fire." They promoted the hell out of it, and then he got eliminated the first episode because at the time he's not really actually that good of a singer technically.
Yeah.
So he went out there and he bombed.
I wonder if he's too good to show up on The Masked Singer, or if he's.
I think he'd be a decent addition to the Masked Singer right now. He could hold his own on something like that. He's a much better singer now.
Yes.
And he had taken more hiatuses, and he's toured several times with his band, and he's recorded several new albums. He's still not like upper echelon great, but like he's a lot better than he used to be.
It really does go to show you that you can. If you don't really have much talent, but you just really, really work hard on it, you can still get pretty good. Like,
yeah, I think that's easier than if you have a lot of talent and don't work. Like, I think somebody who has little talent and puts in all the work will end up better.
Fandango does not actually seem like a great dancer.
No,
No.
he has a
Like-
couple
like,
of moves
yeah.
and poses, and that's
Yes.
it.
Like, they clearly surround him with with
Actual
showgirls
dancers,
who are
yeah.
really good dancers, and like his partner or whatever is clearly a dancer. But
Fandangirl was a sleeper hit.
Is
nobody
that
knew
her name?
No, I mean that's what everyone called her. She had a name. Nobody knew who she was. She was. They were all like, "Who's this girl? Did they sign this girl?" She was like a 20-year-old ballroom dancer student that they had hired to do the gig for like a couple months. And then she left, and she's never been heard from again.
And they replaced her with someone who was much worse.
Summer Rae, yes, Summer Rae.
Summer Rae, right.
The problem was Summer Rae was she always should have been like wrestling, and they never put her in like seriously as a wrestler.
She could not dance very well.
The match itself is like pretty good.
All right, so wait, a couple of things. So first of all, a little bit more on Johnny Curtis.
Yeah.
So Johnny Curtis was in WWE developmental for a long time. He was trained by Killer Kowalski, same guy who trained Triple H and China and a bunch of other people. He had been through Deep South Wrestling, Florida Championship Wrestling, and then finally was on NXT when it was a reality show.
Season 4. Yes.
Won the 4th season.
Against all odds, I might add. Like, he was not somebody people would have picked, but he played the game really well and just avoided being eliminated so often. It was like, Johnny Curtis wins?
Because he's low-key incredible.
guess.
That's why he still has a job.
I remember first seeing him on FCW, and I guess, Katie, that's when you first started.
Yeah, I liked him immediately.
He was immediately and looked like an excellent wrestler. He was teaming with Tyler Rex, who by comparison made him look like an even better wrestler.
Tyler Rex makes lots of people look like good wrestlers.
Yeah, and they were the tag team champions, and yeah, I thought they were great then. I was excited to see Johnny Curtis come up. They do this NXT thing, and then after the 4th season is over and he won, he sticks around. They do this season of NXT Redemption, where they bring back old people who had lost.
NXT Purgatory. That season went on forever.
It went on forever, and they lost all semblance of a contest
Nobody
at some
ever
point.
won.
No one ever won. It just became a soap opera revolving around him, this guy Derek Bateman, and this woman Maxine. And it was bizarre, but he developed this creepy, like, seductor kind of character.
Dirty Curdy.
Yeah, like just really.
His catchphrase became, "Let's get weird."
Oh dear.
And I think that the Fandango character kind of grew out of that.
I could see that.
Nowadays, when Fandango comes out, because he's still on the roster, it's like he's lost any semblance of trying to dance. He comes out like in like leather pants, like you might see on one of the Village People, and he just pelvic thrusts several times.
Oh, him and Tyler Breeze are Chippendales dancers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great
I
act
love
by
it.
now.
I love it because it's after all these years of me being a decade of me being forced to watch women be treated as objects. Here's two men coming out as total objects.
Tyler Breeze is a great character, by the way, who we got to get into eventually.
He's another
I
story.
have always said that
Tyler.
it's a real missed opportunity. That I'm glad that the way that they've addressed misogyny in the WWE is by treating the women the way that they were always treating the men. But it also would have been maybe kind of cool if they just started treating the men the way they treat the women, was just like long ass shots of the Big Show, just like lots of stuff where like Triple H like crying because like Shawn Michaels slept with his girlfriend and then they're just
And then
like
they just
slapping
claw
and
each
pulling
other's
each
eyes
other's
out,
hair.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be fucking great.
Yeah. That would be great.
So, getting to this match, this is Fandango's WWE in-ring debut. It's his first match as Fandango.
There were months of vignettes and stuff beforehand for him.
Jericho had been in the WWE title match, the WrestleMania previous, against CM Punk. So he was at the top of the card, and then they were like, hey, Jericho, was it his idea or Vince's idea?
Oh, he didn't want to face Fandango.
Okay.
He wanted a much higher profile match.
I think he might have suggested, like, oh, I could do a cool match trying to, like, build someone else.
I don't know. Like he said that he really thought it was a bit of a demotion until he got his check, which was commiserate to that of a top star at WrestleMania, and then he was like, "Oh, okay." And that's the thing that like top workers eventually have to realize. If they were using him to elevate Fandango, they wanted to make Fandango a big star, so they wanted to put him over a big star. And if you are the big star, and it's like, okay, you're going to go in and lose to this nobody, you might think, oh, am I getting buried? It's like, no, all the equity you've built, we're now going to use it. And that's very valuable. And we're going to show you how valuable that is in the form of money, which is why it's your job.
And it was shocking that Fandango beats Jericho in this match.
And
It was a genuine surprise.
they made it extra shocking because he hits his finish, that leg drop from the top, and Jericho kicks out of it. And then later, he gets the roll up.
Well, they do. The finish is a small package out of the walls of Jericho, right? Or out of the code breaker.
No, he was
Oh no,
going
he's
to the
trying
walls.
to put him in the walls of Jericho. His knee gives out.
Yeah.
And Fandango rolls him up into the small package. That was it. Yeah. So, we were there. You were there live, right? Oh no, I was there live. Were you there live, Katie? WrestleMania 29.
No.
At MetLife
The only
Stadium?
Mania I've ever been to is 24.
Okay. I was there, and yeah, the whole crowd was, overwhelmingly surprised.
Surely the most
by this
shocking
finish.
thing to happen at that WrestleMania.
Yes, by a lot.
What happened there?
Was that not the WrestleMania where the Undertaker?
No, that was the next year. That was
That was
30.
30.
That was 30.
That was
Oh.
30.
No, this
Surely
was
then,
by
the most
far
shocking thing to happen
at
at
a
that
very
WrestleMania.
bland WrestleMania.
Yeah.
Like that was the Mania with Punk Undertaker, which was a great match.
Yeah.
But besides that, it was very by the numbers. So much so that and this is actually one of the really notable things coming out of this match, the Raw the night after was one of those really great Raws after WrestleMania where the crowd just hijacked the show. And one thing they did was what we opened up this episode with, was just constantly singing Fandango's theme.
Was that in the UK too, I think?
No, that was in New York.
Okay.
That was at the Barclays Center.
They went to the UK the next week like they usually do after WrestleMania, and then they're singing crowds over there. They took it and ran with it too.
But the problem was, the whole point of this match was for Jericho to get Fandango over, and he did. The crowd was into Fandango. They wanted to sing his theme song. Not only did nothing really ever come of it, they didn't push Fandango anymore after that, but they took this Fandangoing phenomenon and they did what the WWE does, and they just beat it into the ground. They would just show video packages about everybody Fandangoing. They had Michael Cole doing it. Once Michael Cole is doing something, it cannot be cool anymore. It's fucking over.
It ruins everything.
If it's like your parents joining Twitter, like you need to stop.
It's
now.
like when your grandma friend requests you on Facebook.
Yep, it is. I feel so guilty about the fact that I have to just make up new lies about how Facebook works every time my grandmother asks me why I have not accepted her friend request yet.
Yeah.
Because she can't see the fucking shit that I post. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like Grandpa went and fought communists in Korea. She's not going to be great to learn that her fucking grandson is one now.
I mean, you just tell her that it's not Facebook anymore. You tell her it's Facebook.
and
Yeah, Facebook.
unfortunately, I don't even have to get that tricky.
She's
going to
end up seeing some terrible porn if you do that.
Yeah.
But so yeah, the match, like, I didn't think this is a bad match. I think, you know, they did a good job telling the story.
Match was fine.
Yeah. So what did you think of it, Evan?
I honestly, the match was fine. I didn't not. It was.
It's not the bad match.
It is not. It is not the bad match. Okay. So the other match.
Yeah.
I watched it and I was like, oh, this is fun. I like their characters. It was kind of short.
Yeah, it didn't
as
go
matches
too
go,
long.
which is that's fucking big.
Yeah.
Big when a match is like 5 to 7 minutes. That's a big thumbs up. That's a real.
I
nice
like
thing.
JBL referencing Baryshnikov
Yeah.
when describing Fandango.
Yeah.
So, okay, the Fandango thing, that was his whole gimmick in the weeks leading up to the match, was people would be like, hey, Fandango, and he'd stop them and say, it's Fandango.
Oh, okay.
They've recently given up on that. They just call him
Yeah.
Fandango now.
I mean, they've given up on Fandango.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. I think, right now he's injured, correct?
Again.
Yeah, but, hopefully, him and Tyler were doing really well on NXT before he got injured. I think that's the right environment for them both.
I was moving on to, unless you have more stuff about this
that's
match.
about it.
No, not really. It's a good little appetizer, but that's really all it is.
The next match, I will be honest, like the match itself, I barely cared about,
And that says a lot, because this is a match from WrestleMania 33, Chris Jericho versus Kevin Owens for the United States title. Kevin Owens is great. Oh, Chris Jericho, as we've already established, is great. This match was not great, and that is very notable.
And I was all of my notes, of which I took rather extensive notes, are about the story stuff leading up to it, because
which is fantastic. And so I just want to preface all this. So the story's great. We'll talk about all of that. This is the bad match. Vince McMahon himself reportedly came up to Kevin Owens after that and said, "This is one of the worst WrestleMania matches of all time. You have failed me completely."
Okay, I mean that seems a little.
That's true. That's a little
like,
harsh.
I was like, it was just sort of like it was just an okay match.
Considering there was a WrestleMania match with the Miller cat fight girls, that's pretty harsh.
I just want to be like, Vince, were you not there for, I don't know, the first 8 WrestleManias? Because I mean, this match, I enjoyed this match far more than every Hulk Hogan match I ever watched. Like,
Hercules Hernandez had a Mania match, right?
Oh yes,
Because that'd definitely be worse.
Hercules Hernandez.
Given the talent involved, given the story leading into it, we should have gotten a lot more.
That is true. That is true.
So the Festival of Friendship.
Oh
Yes.
my God.
We
From
watched
the
that.
February 13th, 2017 Raw.
It's one of the best segments of the last 10 years,
It
if
might-
not the.
I think it's the last great Raw segment. I don't
Okay.
think there's been anything.
What does
anywhere
Evan?
near
What
it.
does
Probably
Evan
not.
think
No,
of the
that's-
Festival of Friendship?
So that's good to know, because I was watching this and I was like, oh, see, I would fucking watch Raw all the time.
Yeah.
I was like, if this was what the TV show of wrestling was like shit like this, and then punctuated by occasional matches, I would totally be into it, because it was amazing. I also really understood in this moment. I was like, I see why Chris Jericho thought his shtick would work outside of wrestling.
Right.
I also see 100% why it did not, and why because he is. It's what he is, like, for wrestling, he is an amazing comedic actor.
Right.
I don't think it would work outside of a context like this, but like, especially like when he comes out in like the full Vegas getup, and like with there's Showgirl, and he's just like, and he's like doing the kind of like
He's
a
doing
little
David
Dean,
Lee Roth, I think.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
to me it was like a Dean Martin, but in
Yeah.
the '80s. So I guess that is David Lee Roth,
Pretty much,
basically.
you know?
Yeah. And it's so fucking fun. And then he's like, when he's unveiling like the artworks that he's made. So the whole thing is that he is clearly trying to purchase the affections of Kevin Owens.
Right, he had failed. So for the year previous, or a really long time previous, Owens had been the Universal Champion. Jericho had been the guy saving his title over and over again, interfering on Owens' behalf to help him win all these matches. But then, I don't know if he started to feel like he was being used, or whatever tension was starting to build to the point where Jericho basically gets Owens booked against Goldberg in a Universal title match. And
Oopsie.
Owens is pissed about this.
Now, Goldberg hadn't been around this whole time, for the record. Like, Goldberg, after many years, was like, I'm gonna come back and have a couple matches. My kids never seen me wrestle, you know.
And he had the best Brock Lesnar match of all time, Goldberg versus Lesnar at, what was it, Survivor Series?
Yeah, I think we watched that.
Well,
right?
we didn't watch that. That was the one leading up to the one we watched. That
Okay.
it was only like 2 minutes long.
Yeah, all right.
Yeah,
I'm talking the first one they had where Goldberg came out and Goldberged all over Brock Lesnar, and it was
Right.
incredible.
He did the Goldberg act. It was like 1 minute. He comes in, spear, jackhammer, and he wins.
Which
And,
is
like,
also what he did to Kevin Owens to win the title.
right. Because the thing about Goldberg, the second Goldberg run that he had in the WWE, they did a lot more smartly, other than the fact that they put the title on him for some reason. Instead of having him have like long matches like they tried to have in 2004 that sucked, they were like, well, the act that got him over was just running through guys. So let's just have him run through some guys, and it was great.
And then they forgot all about that when they booked him against The Undertaker. But
Yes,
that's a whole
that was
other story.
terrible.
So why does he? So I get that. Owens like grew up idolizing Chris Jericho, and they have like the picture of him in the Y2J
Yeah.
shirt and stuff. Why does Jericho like Kevin Owens?
Because he's Canadian, maybe?
I mean, he tells us. I mean, they had sort of just put them together at some point, and they just had this great run. And he tells you, like, you know, this has been some of the most fun I've ever had in WWE in my career, and that's a shoot. I think like that's true.
I mean, they have like for however meh the match was, like they have palpable chemistry as
Yeah.
performers.
Like,
Like
this match
they're
should have been a lot better.
yeah.
And so during the Festival of Friendship, we get Jericho gets to hit kind of his greatest hits of that run. He does the whole list thing, the list of
Oh
Jericho.
yeah. Oh, that's so good.
Where it's like, yeah, you just made the list and whatever, and that ends up turning against him in the end. The It thing, they go to commercial in the middle of it,
Yeah.
but you got to see that.
I would say when he unveils the piece of art made by presumably fictional Norwegian artist Guggenheim, and then he's like,
The maximalist, minimalist, or minimalist maximalist artist.
when he's like, I spent $7,000 on this. I was like, I mean, if the Guggenheim was as popular as they are claiming he is, that's actually an incredible. That's an incredible price. That's
Right.
people spend millions of dollars on shit like that.
And then we get the creation of Adam, or the
Oh.
We
creation
get
of
the
Kevin.
It is. Oh, and then he says a line that I wrote down that I'm gonna just assume that you also wrote down, that somebody else wrote down, and I'm gonna count 1, 2, 3, and then let's say that line together. 1, 2, 3. It's art. You don't need pants. It was just me.
Yeah.
Oh,
I was about to say something like that, but probably with different wording because I couldn't remember the exact line. But yeah, you don't even have any pants on.
I
you want me to hang this in my house?
I
have
have
two
children.
kids.
The funny thing about
But no,
that is
we're on
he's-
the same page.
Yeah.
We're on the
Is
same
he-
page is the point.
is in the painting, he's wearing his ring gear.
Yeah.
Like, that's not really any different. I mean, the pose is a little bit more suggestive.
Well, he wasn't going to hang it in his house.
I mean,
Is the thing.
yeah. I mean, Owens clearly comes from the late Renaissance school where pants are required, and so like it would
a
be
pants guy.
inappropriate. Yeah.
I want to point out that the producer who was working with them at the time, the writer who was
Yeah.
working with the time, was Jimmy Jacobs.
Oh, yeah. Jimmy Jacobs.
Indie wrestling great Jimmy Jacobs, who was a writer for the WWE for a short period of time.
A couple years, I want to say.
And was responsible for some of this great stuff. He was Jericho's sort of personal writer this whole
Yeah.
time. And then just the whole shit crushed his soul, and eventually he kind of got himself fired.
Oh, the writer turnover is awful.
Yeah, for sure. They have a million writers, and very few of them stick around.
It is amazing how much like I don't know. I spent most of my life trying to be some sort of a professional writer, and I still love to write, and I'm sure we'll incorporate that skill into my future career or something. But like the people I know who went on to get like professional writing jobs, it looks fucking miserable.
Yeah.
Like it really is. Like what an amazing way to just completely lose any joy you have for a thing that you love. It's the same way like the handful of people I know who actually like became like professional touring musicians, which was the thing that I wanted to do for most of my life and tried to do. That looks like it sucks.
Or like artists that get like graphic design jobs and stuff.
Yeah, it's so terrible. and
Writing
so
for the
frustrating.
WWE is particularly bad. I mean, particularly thankless. You're in a room of like 30 people, whether you're on the touring group of writers or the home base group of writers. You sit there all day coming up with ideas, and eventually Vince McMahon shows up and says, all right, what do you got? You give him your ideas. He combs through them, maybe picks 2 or 3 of them. And then if he does pick one of your ideas, he's almost certainly going to twist it into something unrecognizable before it actually comes out on TV. And then even if like it gets written into the script for Raw that week, just before the show or even during the show, he might decide just to scrap it all.
And even in the best case scenario where he does take your idea and goes through with it like in unadulterated form, you're not getting credit for that.
Yeah,
Your name's not showing up
There
fucking
aren't credits
anywhere.
on Raw.
Yeah, like
No, if something's good, they'll usually praise the wrestlers.
yeah.
If something's bad, they'll blame the writers.
So, Evan, what did you think? What were you thinking when Gilbert came out?
I was like, oh, it's the good Goldberg.
Yeah.
Thank God.
That's basically it.
It's
Yeah.
the Goldberg that I like. And then I fucking love that guy.
Yeah.
He's so good at playing up like being like a shrimpy ham of a man.
Dwayne Gill.
It is. Maybe that's anti-Semitic that I used to foods that are treif.
I don't think Dwayne Gill is Jewish.
I mean, you are the most. You are the person who I think, without being Jewish, can pass the most for being Jewish
To the
that
po-
I've ever met.
To the point where I often feel like I'm being unintentionally anti-Semitic when I'm talking to people, just because people just assume that I'm Jewish,
I'm
and
like-
there's no comfortable place in a conversation to be like, oh, by the way, I'm not a Jew.
Yeah.
like that doesn't feel good to say that.
I am
but-
like 1/8 Jewish or some small percentage.
I did think about converting at one point just to make my life a little simpler.
How'd you like Friendship the Magician there?
Well, it's funny because they were in Vegas
Yeah.
for this, and I was
Right.
like, because I know Vegas is, from what I understand, like, if you want to be an actor, you move to L.A. If you want to be a wrestler, you move to Philly. If you want to be a magician, you move to Vegas.
Yeah, that's where magic
And so
happens.
They set it up like Chris Angel is going to come out, or
Exactly.
David Copperfield.
And there was part of me that was like, is this dude just like someone who works on the fucking staff and can do
He
a
might
couple
have
tricks?
been,
And
they might have been like, who can do a couple tricks? We need somebody to be a bad magician on stage. Can you do like that? And yeah, I thought it was like I got my 9-year-old a magic kit. She can do those tricks.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
I also love the last few episodes. I talked about how it kind of bums me out that there's not as wide of a variety of body types in wrestling
Yeah,
anymore.
yeah.
Kevin Owens, fat guy, who's
Oh,
a good
yeah.
wrestler.
Oh, he's the
Fucking
best
love it.
fat guy.
Yeah,
I remember there
yeah.
was I may have even said this on the show before. He did a long form interview right before he went to the WWE, and they asked him, we heard you had a tryout at the Performance Center, and he's like, yeah, and they were like, so they say they make you do like a lot of ridiculous cardio down there. Like, can you keep up with all that? And he just goes, yeah, of course. If not, then I wouldn't be able to go down there.
It's
And-
almost as if scale weight and
Yeah.
body fat composition has far less of an impact on your actual physical health and ability than people
especially-
than led to believe.
It's
Especially-
almost as if the stigma against fat people is entirely created by the media.
Yeah.
It's one would think. I mean, obviously it can't be that,
No.
but
It has to do
it is
much
as
more
if
with
it is
just-
like that.
Just working on your cardiovascular system. If you have extra weight on you and you can go, then you go.
Yeah.
It's almost as if weight has no correlation to physical fitness.
But so, I mean, Owens, on that point, he could be like the Steve Austin character, but to an even greater extent as the everyman hero.
Yeah.
He looks like the audience to a large extent. He, you could imagine just being a guy and working really hard and becoming Kevin Owens and getting to the top of the WWE.
And to the credit of the WWE, they've pushed Owens either to the top or near the top the entire time they've had him. And people didn't think he'd get pushed so hard, but they, apparently Vince, despite, what he said to him after this match, apparently Vince really likes him, really likes his attitude, likes his matches in general.
I think they're waiting on the right moment to really push him to the moon. Like he was going to face Daniel Bryan for the title
Yeah.
at WrestleMania 35 last year, but then the Kofi thing happened, and that was clearly the better story.
Oh, thank God they went with that. They never
Yeah,
go with
seriously.
anything. I noticed something just leafing through this episode of Raw. Like, I didn't watch it. I looked through the segments on the WWE Network, and it could have been Raw last week. they're waiting, and you can end the sentence there. They do not freshen the show. It's this almost, not entirely, but it's almost the same guys in the same spots. Braun Strowman trying to break into the main event, Elias singing a song, Roman Reigns bumbling around, Seth Rollins at the top for some reason, Kevin Owens is really good, but there's always somebody right above him, and it just has not changed. And if you go back to like any time they were popular, either in the 80s and then in the 90s, Raw does not look like Raw looked 2 years before it at any point in that. You know, they need more turnover. They don't, I hate to put it like this, but they don't fire enough people. You know, and especially now when there's like so many jobs in wrestling outside the WWE, I don't feel bad for people who get fired from the WWE because there's opportunity there. But they're hoarding talent. They're keeping everyone under contract because they're afraid someone will actually be a big star that sparks a big boom in wrestling somewhere else. But they're not letting any spark take hold within themselves.
I kind of feel like there should be, much the way that I feel like there should be a rule like this in comedy, where there should be like an unofficial like 15-year career limit.
Yeah.
Like they shouldn't make you retire at 15 years, but it should be generally accepted that like if you've been popular for 15 years, you've had a good run. It's time. The window of cultural relevance is closing on you, and you should leave before it shuts all the way, and then you start making Netflix comeback specials.
So what you're saying is they shouldn't make you retire at 15 years, but they should start Amish-style shunning you and give you the silent treatment so you leave.
Yes, they should. Brock Lesnar should be made to change in a dressing room with no electricity on the other side of Madison Square Garden.
He's a farm boy. He'd be down with that.
He's pretty used to that.
I mean, to his credit, John Cena has sort of gracefully stepped aside after 15 years of dominance.
He is. It is looking like he's going to come in to have a match at Mania, but that's, you know, he's not chewing up the scenery on the show every week. I don't think the problem is with the top guys sticking around, though. If somebody is actually still popular and moving ratings and moving merchandise, they can stick around. It's the entire undercard. If somebody fails to get over past like their mid-card position, they can have their act for a couple of years, but then you got to shuffle them off and bring someone else in, because those same guys that aren't getting past your top guys are still not going to get past them in a couple of years. You need to give somebody else a chance.
I can't believe I'm saying this.
Yeah.
But I feel like maybe the WWE should put out like more shit. Only in the sense that like because they put out a staggering amount of stuff and yet still seem to not showcase like 80% of their talent.
Well, they just signed too many people. It's like if it's like if a basketball team signed 200 players. Like, I don't know exactly how many people is on a full NBA roster.
200 players.
Yeah, 200 players, right? But I know
Good
there's,
job, Doc.
there's
You
five.
fucked it up.
There's 5 people playing at any given time. You have a bunch of substitutes. You have a full team, but you don't have 200 players. And the WWE is at the point where they just have too many, because like they have the Raw roster, the SmackDown roster, the NXT roster, the NXT UK roster, the 205 Live roster. They have 150 people on various TV shows, and still they have all these people not on TV. They can't all get over.
But I mean, if they could also break it up a little more, instead of having 3 hours of Raw, where you have a single roster that's super stagnant, you know, make it 2 hours and take an hour of it and put those guys in a separate roster.
Yeah.
You know?
And it also feels like if you have a streaming service, like I know NXT for a long time was just streaming and is now on TV.
Now it's on USA
But
Network.
it's like, yeah, instead of having 3 hours, like have like your 3 2-hour shows, one for each product, like, you know, have them like 2 hours, so it's like more good stuff and
Hear
less
that
filler.
wrong? 2 hours.
And then you can put an infinite amount of stuff on your fucking streaming service and showcase all. Have a show that's like our weekly show with our bottom 20 guys. Let's see who's gonna fucking rise to the top.
The
Like there's so much you could do.
Is the networks pay them a shitload of money to keep putting shit on TV that nobody watches.
I feel like we've stumbled into like the root problem of American capitalism.
Right, yeah. Well, but back to Raw and this last great Raw segment, the Festival of Friendship. It ends when Owens gives Jericho his gift, and it's a new list, but it's the list of KO with Jericho's name on it, and then he beats the shit out of him.
How come my name's on that list?
Which it also felt good.
So good. The timing was perfect.
Because I have learned enough about wrestling where when this bit started, and I was like, oh, this is like a sentimental and unironic expression of affection from one character to another, and I was like, I've learned enough about wrestling to know that this means somebody is getting betrayed at the end of this.
Absolutely.
So when he pulls out the list of KO, I was like, there it is.
Yep.
And he got the apron power bomb from Owens, which is devastating. But of course, on NXT, they just use it as like a move in the middle of the match.
That's the finish to the Mania match.
That's the finish
The
to the
apron
Mania
power
match.
bomb.
Absolutely. I like how he throws him through the TV screen, which Jericho used to call the Geritron 5000.
The obscenely expensive Geritron
There you go.
5000.
And then they throw a towel over his face as if he were bleeding,
Yeah.
even though he's clearly not bleeding. So yeah, they have this match at WrestleMania 33, and this is, an infamous Mania. We've already watched 2 matches from it. The aforementioned Brock Lesnar-Goldberg match, which is the best of their matches, but is still not great. The Undertaker-Roman Reigns match, which I think is the worst main event in WrestleMania history. This was a particularly depressing time in my life.
Because of this WrestleMania.
Well, that was that night was a sort of the culmination of a lot of awful shit that was going on. So I wasn't paying great attention to this whole show. I was just kind of sad for the whole thing. So I didn't really notice this match being particularly good or bad or whatever. I thought it was kind of there. It was maybe one of the better matches on the show.
I honestly think the problem stems from the fact that, once again, for some reason, they just had to put the title on Goldberg so that Goldberg and Lesnar could be for the title, when really Jericho Owens should have been the main event for the title.
Yeah.
And, they were disappointed with their spot on the card.
Yeah.
And, the fact that it wasn't this big main event that it should have been, even though everyone could see that it should have been this big main event. So it's entirely possible that the reason it wasn't the amazing match it should have been is their hearts weren't really in it.
Yeah.
And it's also, in any improvised or semi-improvised art form, I mean, you can get masters of the craft, and sometimes they'll just have an off night.
Yeah.
And if
of
two
course.
guys have an off night, and they have a match together, that's just kind of what the deal is.
So I think what's specifically wrong with the match is, coming out of the Festival of Friendship, you have evil Kevin Owens, who betrayed Chris Jericho, and what Vince reportedly wanted from him was to be like a horrible, heartless, evil bastard in this match, and we don't really get that. In fact, there are moments where Jericho kind of seems like the heel.
Yeah.
And they're both doing all this high-flying stuff, all these big reversals of big high-flying moves, and there's no emotional hook to the actual match. They're just kind of doing stuff.
And it seems like it's a bad idea to try to make... Kevin Owens seems like he has a natural warmth to some degree.
No, he can be a really good heel. We need to watch some of his stuff with El Generico on the Indies, where he betrayed El Generico as well and was an evil bastard.
His first NXT heel turn on Sammy.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Where they waited till that last second to...
And he's trying to do that with his facial expressions and stuff in this match, but it's the way he wrestles the match. He's trying to do all these high spots. He wants to do a swanton bomb and a big frog splash and there's big cannonballs in the corner and all this impressive shit. And the crowd responds to it. You hear the crowd chanting both these guys, and this is awesome.
But that's not what they were going for, though. That's not the story that's being told.
Exactly.
If you want Kevin Owens to be a heel, you stop doing impressive stuff. If you want Chris Jericho to be a face, don't have him hit his moves. Just have him sell if he's trying to put over Kevin Owens,
And don't have him call Owens a son of a bitch in the middle of the
yeah.
match and stuff like that.
I didn't really mind that because, I mean, from the perspective of Jericho's character, why wouldn't he be mad and calling him names after he poured his heart out and Owens betrayed him?
I get it, but in the way that moment felt, it didn't hit the right note at that point in the match.
Now, if we're talking about Jericho being a heel, and what are some of the good ways to showcase Chris Jericho being a villainous bastard? Holy shit, this next match.
Okay, so yeah.
Wait, you're looking at me like I got it wrong. Like,
No, you
wait,
got
no,
it right.
no,
You're
no.
absolutely right.
all right, yeah.
Yeah.
I was like, wait,
No.
was he not? He literally beats up somebody's son and says, "Look at what I'm doing to your son."
Yeah.
Red Shoes and Red Shoes Jr. Yes.
Yes.
No, Jericho's a beautiful heel in Japan. So the final match that we're watching was we watched Chris Jericho versus Kenny Omega from Wrestle Kingdom 12. This was a huge deal.
It's one of the most important matches of the last several years in all of wrestling. It kind of set the stage for AEW, for the whole wrestling landscape right now. Jericho was still under contract with WWE when the build for this match began. He got permission from Vince McMahon to do it. Apparently, the only thing that Vince didn't get was the whole Alpha versus Omega thing.
Right,
He's
right.
like, why are you the Alpha, Jericho? Because I think Vince has a certain idea of what an Alpha is.
Sure.
Where Jericho was like, no, I'm the beginning. Like Alpha in that sense, not an alpha male.
Yeah,
It's,
which is also
Vince-
a concept that's not only been debunked, but also the authors of the original paper were like, "That's totally not what we." meant."
Oh,
Right.
you mean the concept of like alphas in regards to packs have been debunked, and it's something that only happens in captivity?
Yes, and that also, and then like when there are like roles in the wild, like between wolves or whatever, where there's sort of a leader, like it's not like dumbass fucking.
It's not what we think of in
Yeah.
humans.
yeah. There was one more moment actually in the Owens match that
Oh sure, go. For it.
and it was probably part of what took away from the match because it kind of got a pop was when he breaks the pin with one finger
That was
on
good.
the rope.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
But again,
What a
that was
gutsy baby face Kevin Owens is.
it was cute. It was you don't want to be
Yeah.
if you're the heel, you don't want to be too cute in a
No.
match.
By the way, you hear that, Red Pillars? Alphas don't exist. You're all
don't.
full of shit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so Jericho and Omega, with the moment where Jericho showed up on the screen at a New Japan event,
Yeah.
just, blew everybody's mind. And everyone was ready for this incredible match. Apparently, Don Callis put it together.
Yeah, yeah.
Don Callis seen on the ground in horrible pain once Jericho gets. Was it Jericho or Omega that got thrown into him?
So
it was
Omega does a big flying springboard crossbody to the outside, and he lands through the table and he knocks over Callis.
Yeah.
Apparently, the original spot, and a lot of the things I'm going to say about this match come from Chris Jericho's podcast when he had Omega on and they totally dissected this match completely, which is a great little document.
So that's
that
the thing I
exists.
want to point out there, which is part of the cool dynamic in modern wrestling that they can do that would have just been unheard of not that long ago. Jericho and Omega have this incredible match in this Japanese promotion, and then immediately, like the next week on Jericho's podcast, he has Omega on the show, and his podcast that's in English primarily for American audiences, and they talk about how they planned it out and what they did,
fucking
and how
awesome.
they did the angle and how great it was.
Cornette was infuriated.
Cornette is always infuriated. I can't take that shit anymore.
Honestly, I feel like I want to go listen to that.
Yeah,
because
you know?
this match was.
You can find it's called Talk is Jericho's his podcast. Search for it if you're interested.
So what Omega says about that spot is
Yeah.
he wanted to jump directly onto Callis.
Yeah.
But when he gets up on the rope, he realizes Callis is way farther out than he thought. So he's like, all right, I'll just hit the table.
Yeah.
And he still clips Callis a little bit and knocks
he does. He
him down.
knocks him down.
Just talking about the beginning of this match. I mean, Jericho always is dressed amazing, always has incredible clothes. Kenny Omega, man, his entrance, like when it starts, I was like, wow, I guess he's lived in Japan long enough where he's actually become a JRPG boss.
Yes.
like
Basically.
he looks like Kefka's like second form when he shows up. It's fucking beautiful.
When he
Like,
first debuted his character, like the cleaner Kenny Omega, he was really like putting off Sephiroth vibes.
Yeah.
His finishing move is called the One Winged Angel, which is a Final Fantasy VII reference.
Most
You
of
know.
Kenny Omega is video games.
Yeah.
references.
Yeah.
He used to literally do Hadoukens to his opponents early in his career.
No, he was somebody, he like was in Japan for like 10 years or something like that, and then
Yeah,
came
like 7
back.
or 8. But yeah, he did. He lived in Japan. He's fluent in Japanese. He is as Japanese as he is Canadian at this point.
He's only become a big star in the States now in AEW.
Yeah, he had never wrestled regularly in America before. Not really. Like he had a cup of coffee in developmental.
We saw him in Ring of Honor.
Yeah, we saw him in Ring of Honor. He was in Jersey All Pro. He did a few indie dates, but he was
PWG.
Canadian.
I remember in like 2005, 2006 hearing, oh my God, this guy.
Yeah.
Not only is he Canadian, him and Jericho are both from Winnipeg.
right.
So
You idiot.
so the parallels between them go really deep. You know, Jericho also had made his name in Japan a little bit before he really made his name in the States.
Yeah, they knew who he was very well.
They're both sort of progressive in their styles.
Yeah.
For their time.
And like, I mean, the performer chemistry between the two of them is amazing. I was really happy to watch this match. This was the last match I watched in a battery of matches for 2 episodes. And I was having a real hard time up until, because I was just starting to be like, oh my God, like we're almost at episode 50, counting the premiums, and like I'm still not really that into wrestling. Like I know this is becoming a real burden. And then we get to this match, and I was like, well, that was fucking wall to wall amazing.
By the way,
New Japan matches are so long, though.
yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Ben.
Oh no, totally.
No, they are.
But
This match probably could have been 5-10 minutes
on
shorter.
the entrance, Omega's entrance was actually supposed to be more spectacular. They had kept promising him they were going to do this whole new video package, new theme music, all this shit. And then like the week of the thing, they were like, oh, sorry, like we ran out of time. We couldn't do it for you. It's like, what the fuck? They did make up for it the next Wrestle Kingdom.
Yeah,
They had
yeah,
an
yeah.
unbelievably over-the-top
And he
entrance.
came out on a spaceship. No, wait, that was John Cena.
That was John Cena that one time. Oh, yeah, no, he came out with a huge, like, Undertale-inspired video package and, like, just...
He
Yeah,
came out to that.
He came out to Megalovania, I believe.
I love the very beginning. The Young Bucks are there, and and Jericho kind of attacks him before the bell, and all the young boys, the like young Japanese trainees are around, and Jericho's just kind of shoving them around, and they're trying to hold him back, and he's throwing them away like flies.
I wonder if that this is a random side note, but I wonder if that's why. Because a few weeks ago when I listened to Halloween's Walls of Jericho, so as to familiarize myself with it for this, YouTube's next recommended video was Megalovania from the Undertale thing, and I was like, how are these two songs connected? I don't understand. So maybe I wonder if because YouTube is starting to think that I'm really into wrestling and like you want to watch this stuff. I'm like, no, I got to remember to watch this shit on incognito mode.
No, bad TiVo. But I thought you liked the horsey movies.
So I just want to mention again, even though you already referred to it, the moment after the table's broken, when Jericho shoves down the referee, Red Shoes Uno, grabs his son, who is also one of the young boys,
Also wearing red shoes.
puts him in the walls of Jericho, and shouts at Red Shoes, "Look at what I'm doing to your son."
Which, like, 'cause,
Fantastic.
you know, I love in
Just great.
in Japanese matches. You know, the concept of who is the heel really revolves around who is the most disrespectful.
Yes.
And like right from the very beginning, like you see Jericho's like shoving people around and like being flipping people off.
He grabs one of the cameras from ringside and starts taking pictures of the audience with his middle finger in front of it.
Oh, I love how also because it's you know it's a Japanese language show, so the fucking wrestlers who speak English can swear.
Yeah,
'Cause
all they want.
Because at one point,
fuck,
Jericho
fuck,
just
fuck,
looks
fuck,
at somebody
fuck,
and goes,
fuck.
"Shut your mouth, fuck face." I was like, I've never actually heard a wrestler swear
that's
in this
great.
whole
Fuck, fuck,
time we've been
fuck.
doing this.
They had to get a wrestler, Tamatonga, who's, he's Tongan, but he speaks fluent English and all that is his first language. They had to get him to tone it down once they started putting trying to go into America, because he was so aware of that he'd just be cursing the whole match, just the whole match.
So, you know, this already started a bit with the Bullet Club, who Omega was the leader of for a while, where it was this sort of more cheating, disrespectful American kind of vibe. But Jericho, when he comes to New Japan, he brings a totally different feeling, a kind of chaos into the normally orderly, respectful Japanese landscape that makes his matches different from everyone else's.
He's doing Stan Hansen, you know, because like one of the things in Japanese wrestling is that they like white Western guys. I don't want to say Americans because he's Canadian, but I mean, you know, basically they want the Americans like that to come over to Japan and act like, monstrous, awful Americans physically. They want the guy to come out and be a monster and beat up the fans and plow and be disrespectful to the photographers at ringside and everybody that you'd respect.
Not actually beat up the fans.
Stan Hansen would actually beat up the
Well,
fans.
Stan
Dude, the Young
Stan
Bucks.
Hansen killed a guy. No.
I mean, we can't prove that he didn't.
He broke Bruno's neck. The Young Bucks
he did
said
break Bruno's neck.
that fans will come up to them and be like, "Can you super kick me?" And they can't fake super kick them, so they kick him because you gotta, please, because they come up to Kobashi and "Can you chop me?" So he'll chop him and it stings and it's all, but he's not chopping you in the face like the Young Bucks kind of have to do.
Doc, can I chop you right now?
Yeah.
I can't. There's too much equipment around.
We were waiting for the sound. You got to get the sound in.
Support us.
Back up then.
Oh,
pretty
I
good.
felt that.
Yeah.
Wow.
The only thing I was ever
was
any
good.
good at was chops.
You
good.
support us on Patreon so we can get
tingly.
a bigger studio so we can do more chops, more in-studio chops.
Yeah, that'd
so
be
we
great.
can get that butt tier going.
So, according to Jericho and Omega in the Talk is Jericho podcast, a lot of this had to be ad-libbed.
Yeah.
So apparently they were going to do a moonsault through the table spot, and Will Ospreay did that earlier in the card.
Ospreay.
And they're professional enough to change up their match when someone else steals their spot early
Right.
enough. So the spot where Omega jumps off the scaffold and double stomps Jericho,
Yeah.
which looks like he came up with it on the fly, was actually ad-libbed.
All right, cool.
And there's another moment where Jericho puts him in the walls of Jericho, and Omega crawls to the corner. And apparently before the match, he had very carefully placed a bottle of that cold spray.
Yeah.
What I like to think of as healing spray.
Right. You see in Japanese wrestling, right after the match, some of the attendants will come over and immediately spray down whoever's in the ring with it. And it's like, oh, no, that's clearly a healing potion.
But it's cold. It's
Right,
like
right.
putting ice on your sore muscles.
Yeah.
But in that same earlier match between Ospreay and Marty Scurll, apparently Marty Scurll had to get the first aid kit out from under the ring.
Yeah.
And so he must have moved the bottle of cold spray. So you see Omega frantically searching under the ring while still in the walls of Jericho to reach and find the bottle of cold spray. And eventually he gets it and sprays Jericho in the face.
I love the recurring theme throughout Chris Jericho's career of him keeping people in the walls of Jericho far past the
Yes.
point where it's
Ask him.
legal. When they're just the refs are like, you gotta stop, and he's like, no, no.
I love him screaming ring the bell. He gave up.
Yeah.
He gave up. Ask him. He gave up already. Ring the bell.
And earlier in the match, Red Shoes forgets that it's no DQ, as people do, referees do all the fucking time. And
Sometimes they just don't tell you.
Oh, yeah, okay. But he starts counting when Jericho has Omega in the walls and Omega gets to the rope.
Yeah.
And Red Shoes starts counting, and Jericho's like, it's no DQ, jackass.
Sometimes you think it's a one-on-one match, and then the third guy comes out.
Yeah.
True story.
Once again, I just Jericho is so vocal in a way that no other wrestler is. And it seems like a thing that people should do more.
Yeah.
It seems like it's an easy way to make yourself more interesting.
They tell you to do it in wrestling school. It's like you're tooth bed thinking about your next spot to kind of live in the moment with it.
Oh,
A
yeah.
lot
I
of
see,
wrestlers,
yeah.
especially nowadays, aren't great talkers.
Yeah.
And even if they can kind of piece together a promo when it's written for them, talking spontaneously in that way is just not something that comes naturally to them, especially when they have to think about all the fucking complicated bullshit that they've put together.
Well, I mean, that's the problem with losing the ability just to call it in the ring. Like these matches where, a lot of this match was improvised, so a lot of the space in their minds was freed up to think about what can I do to make this second great. One thing I like to observe about Kenny Omega is every little motion he makes, the way he pauses for a quarter of a second before he starts running and then shoots off running. Instead of it looks more serious.
It's all very video game inspired.
It is all very video game inspired. Oh, he got that cold spray. He sprays Jericho, gets out of the walls, sprays his armpits, his hair, and then down his pants, and then the look on his face oh, I don't know if I should have done that, but I'm awake.
you mentioned him as the cleaner.
Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Hitman.
It means he likes mopping.
Okay.
Yeah, that's where the whole the gun pantomime comes. Goodbye and good
Gotcha.
night. His catchphrase.
So for the Bullet Club, he was kind of the guy who got rid of people for them. Okay.
Right.
It means at night he's a janitor.
yeah, he cleans the Tokyo
Yeah, they
Dome.
do not. It
After
does
he-
not pay well.
After he wins his match, he goes to the local high school and gets a mopping.
Another Jericho vocal moment that was great is you often hear the young women in the audience with their relatively high-pitched voices screaming the first names of the wrestlers, like Kenny, and Jericho mocked that back to them. That was pretty great.
I do just want to, going off a point that Katie made, I was an elementary school janitor for about a year and a half in my 20s, and that was by far the best shape I was ever in, because having to mop an entire school hallway, like multiple floors of the hallway, is a totally a full body workout if you're doing it right. And I was like, it was also at a time in my life where I was completely unconcerned with like anything physical or being in shape. And I remember one day just like noticing like, I'm kind of ripped now. What? This is crazy. And then I lost that job.
You also had to do a lot of running in fear from the children.
It seems like
I was the night janitor. Thank God.
okay.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you were a day janitor, that seems like the kind of thing that'd be soul crushing. Every day another kid pukes.
Once a week I would work during the day. I mostly worked at night, but once a week I would work during the day. And the guy, my boss, was so happy when I would be there, because I would just constantly be getting radioed throughout the day. We'd be like, shh, somebody peed in room 403. You got to go deal with that.
Like, how often did someone like pee or puke or poop on the floor in an elementary school per day?
In a classroom or in general?
Just on the ground anywhere.
So I was on the ground in the bathroom daily.
Right,
Although,
I mean, that's kids got to learn names.
Yeah,
so.
kids, and I will say,
But like on the floor in like non-bathrooms, like how often did a kid like hurl and you had to get out the wood chips, pencil shavings?
Me working once a week, working during the day once a week, I had to deal with that at least every couple of weeks.
Oh, boy.
I will say, not an ocean of difference in cleanliness between the kids' bathrooms and the teachers' bathrooms. Like,
if anything, the women's teacher bathrooms probably were worse.
the men's and women's were about on par, I would say. And also I also spent about 8 months as a professional apartment cleaner.
Right.
And I will also I never really saw a meaningful difference between bathroom cleanliness in terms. Age is the bigger determinant.
Did anyone ever
really.
paint with their poop on the walls? At any of those jobs, did anyone ever like make you nice like little paintings with their fecal matters for you to clean up?
No, I did. There were a couple times in the elementary school where there were times when I was just like, is this kid like okay? Like where I would like they would send me afterwards and I'd be like, did this child die after what happened here? Like are they doing all right? But I guess that's just kids.
This is contesting wrestling.
So-
Poopy, poopy, fart, farts.
Well, what we're
Speaking
saying is
of
Kenny
people-
Omega needed to come and clean these places.
Yes.
Nice.
Yeah.
So speaking of people almost dying, so the one-winged angel is a devastating finisher.
Oh yeah, it looks incredible.
No one ever kicks out of it.
At this time, no one had ever kicked out of it. I don't know if maybe Tanahashi
No
did
one ever kicked
eventually.
out of it. If Kenny Omega is going to lose, he either doesn't hit the move or he does what he did in this match and hit the move so close to the ropes that Jericho could obviously grab the rope, and it was
Right.
seen clearly as Kenny's mistake that he did it so close.
Right.
But Jericho did not kick out of the one-winged angel.
He did reverse it into the walls of
Yeah.
Jericho really slickly once.
You can roll through with it, but once the impact hits, that's the finish.
But then finally in the end, now the first one-winged angel that Jericho grabbed the rope after already looked devastating.
Oh yeah.
And then the second one where Omega's great too. There's a chair. He hits Jericho with a chair. The chair is kind of close to the rope. As he's picking him up for the one-winged angel, you'll notice him put his foot on the chair and drag it out into the ring.
Yeah.
So that he can hit the one-winged angel on the chair, and that looks just absolutely neck-shattering.
Well, that's also when he does that move. Like I don't know the move and the physics of it well enough to really judge it, but it looks like he almost does it wrong. Like Jericho has to tuck under at the end of it to a point where like it looks like he has to like really snap his body like in a particular direction to avoid breaking his neck.
Yeah,
but
pretty much,
is
yeah.
that just what the move looks like, and you just have to really do it right, or
More or less.
Yeah.
Yeah, damn.
No, it doesn't. He doesn't. Not everybody takes it all the time.
Yeah.
So, according to Jericho, he was in bad shape after that match, and
Yeah,
you can
I
see
believe
it
it.
as he's walking out.
When he's
and-
already at this point like 45 or 46,
Yeah, and so he hit up DDP,
Yeah.
Diamond Dallas Page, the next day and was like, "Can you recommend a yoga workout?"
Right.
DDP's like, can I?
Yeah, and
you want to hold back the walls, the sands of time.
Can you
He
be in
actually says
Florida
the
tomorrow?
hands
We'll
of
film
time.
the
The
whole
hands?
thing.
Wait, he says
Bang.
the hands of time.
He says the hands of time.
That's not what the phrase is. But I guess
Who said the hands of time?
DDP in DDP Yoga. He's like, if you want to hold back the hands of time, I think he's thinking of like a clock, like the hands.
I guess. Yeah.
That
Hey,
is-
the guy,
Look, I mean, it's clearly he clearly has a successful yoga enterprise.
He
So
does.
I think he
it's honestly the least culturally appropriate.
couldn't
of yoga
read
I've ever
until his
seen.
20s or something like that.
Yeah,
He
the
was
longer
He is from
does
New
it-
Jersey.
He is. The longer he does it, the more he tries to distance it from traditional yoga for reasons because, it's not like a religious experience. It's not, this whole system. It's you do this and your body feels good.
Look, as much as
Yeah.
I strive to be a non-judgmental person in my life, if a white person says namaste to you, vomit into their face. Vomit into their eyes and nostrils.
I mean, how could you not?
yeah.
Pee on them.
Yeah.
I mean, unless they are a yoga instructor, like
No, I
well
would,
trained in the. I mean, when Adrian says it, like I'm okay. I'm kind of okay. With
Oh,
her saying it.
I like her and her yoga, but I don't approve. I don't approve of you of that.
Well, that settles it.
Yeah, we're
Yeah.
done. Let's fight. I really want to do a Kenny Omega episode.
He's
man.
incredible.
He's fucking
Yeah.
unbelievable.
And he's still like he's in AEW now, and they're not even using him to his potential by reports because he wants to be on the back burner a little bit and push everyone else, and eventually they will.
I gotta fucking catch up on AEW, man. I know,
It's okay, man. It's okay.
One point of wrestling criticism here. So Dave Meltzer, the great wrestling critic,
Yes.
gave this match 5 stars. It's Jericho's first ever 5-star match from Dave Meltzer. There's an Omega match that we'll watch that Meltzer gave 6 stars.
Does it normally go 1 to 5? And he
Yes.
was like, I need
Yes.
to just
Didn't he
fucking
give a
break
match
out.
7 stars recently?
He gave a match like somewhere between 6 and 7. He had
one
a,
was that?
I can't remember. One of the Okada matches. His justification is like twofold. First, and this is absolutely valid. It's my opinion rating system. Fuck you. And I think that's you don't really have to go past that. But the other thing is he had started giving out more 5-star matches more frequently because he's really into the style of the top guys. So he had given a couple of 5-star matches in a row, and then a match happened that he saw, well, this match is clearly better than the matches that I just gave 5 stars to, so I'm going to rate it higher. If anyone has a problem with that, they can start their own damn newsletter, Yeah, the current New Japan style may be the best style that's ever happened in the world, just from like a hardcore watching wrestling perspective. There are people that don't like it, of course, but just, super match after great wrestler, after like Okada versus everybody, Omega versus everybody, Naito, and like just,
Amazing callbacks from
Yeah.
one match to the next. Like you'll always see the match develop over the iterations of
Right.
two wrestlers wrestling
like
each other.
you'll see Okada and Tanahashi wrestle several times, not like back to back, but over the course of years, they'll have a few matches at big shows, and each match will build off the previous one. And it just tells a great long-term story. Their booker now is great at telling story. Not only the match is good, but the booking is good. There's always a problem with WCW where they had all these great wrestlers, but then the stories didn't make any sense.
Yeah,
No.
so right now on AEW, they've got Chris Jericho and Kenny Omega and
They do.
Orange
That's
Cassidy.
right. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And yeah. So
OC.
I gotta catch up.
And somehow aren't really holding my interest
Yeah.
with
I'm
with
a little
all of
behind.
that. Yeah.
I like the stuff that I'm hearing happening. I'm gonna catch up. I don't know how many weeks behind I am, like 3 or 4. It's a priority.
They've
it's
also
not my
got
top priority.
they've also got a women's champion Nyla Rose. Die mad about it.
Yeah, die mad about it, as she put it.
I mean, I
Yeah.
watched the first AEW episode, and she had a great match.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She eventually beat Riho for that title.
Yeah, like just a week or 2 ago. Twitter exploded in all the directions you'd expect, and great. whatever. She's a big star, and let's keep that happening. All right, so
All
are
right.
we wrapping it up for this week?
Yep.
Yeah.
This has been
Come on, baby.
This has been part 2 of the main feed episodes about Chris Jericho. Really, it's chapter 3 in our 4-part saga. And if you would like to hear the entire saga, as well as hear just one extra episode of Contesting Wrestling every week, come hell or high water, you should check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/contestingwrestling, and give us $5 a month. You also get access to main feed episodes as far in advance as we can record and edit them, which is somewhere between 1 and 4 weeks generally.
As Evan can record and edit them.
I
We
ma-
can edit them. We all record it. We're all here.
I make even more poop jokes in the premium episodes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we let it fly as much as we want.
By it, he means poop. We let poop fly.
We let poop fly.
Oh, to the
as
walls.
much as
I
we
have to
want.
clean up. We do this in my apartment. It's a little bit disconcerting.
It really smells. His roommates are mad.
We're gonna still try to also stay up on the mini-sodes and everything, but just a warning to our listeners that the mini-sodes might slow down a little bit as
Evan
everybody
got a
gets
job.
busy, and so
No, he
we'll
didn't.
see. I have not yet, but I will eventually need to get a
Look,
job.
we're gonna
Yeah.
record as much as
Right,
we
Evan is-
possibly can and crank it out as much as we possibly can, and that's all we can
Yeah.
really promise. But we promise you, on top of that, like we will absolutely keep one full premium episode coming on Patreon every week. So give us a sign up, and yeah, we hope you enjoy the show.
The Paw
Yeah.
Patrol are evil. 1312.
Yep. Yes.
Stay out of the ocean.
Stay out of the ocean, but follow us on Twitter @ContestingW. Thank you. We love you.